please run the short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Charlene, would you please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Xavier for Fideli,
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to be here.
I think he's just running a little bit late.
Yeah, okay, good.
Commissioner Haskew,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Meadows,
Here.
Commissioner/Representative Nowak,
Here.
Commissioner Sauce is absent, Commissioner Stepper,
Here.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Here.
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Here.
Chair/Representative Glover,
Here.
Representative Foley,
Present.
Representative Peoples. Okay, so we have Representative Peoples and Commissioner Sauce absent.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask that everyone remotely mute your phones. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comments. And we will take public comments here in person. If there's anyone, please fill out a speaker card. But at this time, we'll go out to the public and also to understand whether we had any written public comments prior to the meeting.
We have not received any written or verbal comments. Do we have any virtual public comment? If so, please raise your hand. I don't see any public comment.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have any in the room, right?
No.
Okay. Move to our next order of business, which is consent calendar. Okay, is there any board members that have any desire to pull items from the consent calendar? Seeing that, did we receive any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Noack, second by Thorpe. Roll call, please.
Member Xavier, I wanted to let you know that Member Fideli has arrived.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli,
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce is absent. Commissioner Sepper,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Aye.
Chair Glover.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent.
We're now moving to our regular items on the agenda. The first item before us is the item that will be presented by Lindsay to provide a legislative update and request for action on Assembly Bill 316.
Good evening, Commissioners. Oh, there we go. We had to get the camera started as well. So, thank you. I'm here this evening to ask you to take a position on Assembly Bill 316 at the request of some of our partners at Gomentum Station. Assembly Bill 316 requires a safety driver in all heavy-duty autonomous vehicle trucks. And I believe there is a copy of the legislation. Is that better, Commissioner Kelly? Thank you. In your packet. We typically bring positions on pieces of legislation through the APC committee. And the reason we are here tonight is because this bill is moving fairly quickly. It has already been referred to the Communications and Conveyance Committee, and their next meeting is scheduled for March 29th, in a few weeks. And if any support or opposed positions are to be included in the analysis for that committee, if they do agendize it for March 29th, the deadline for that is next Friday. And so we are bringing this before you for your consideration. Concurrently with this piece of legislation, the California Department of Motor Vehicles is also working on regulations related to heavy-duty autonomous vehicles. They currently require a safety driver in their light-duty passenger vehicles as part of the regulations that DMV has already produced. And so, one option is to allow the Department of Motor Vehicles to continue to go through this very public process of putting a regulation in place before legislation is put in place as well. And so I do believe that you may hear from some folks on public comment regarding their positions on this bill as well. But that is the reason we are bringing this before you kind of more quickly and more directly than we normally would for a piece of legislation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions or comments from the commission? I see we have Karen Stepper. Is your light on?
Oh, I
Yeah,
apologize. It was
Okay.
hidden here. Thank you.
Any commissioner questions? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Fidelli.
Yes, I was just wondering, have we connected with the two Assembly folks that are co-sponsors of this bill, one being the Assembly member from Gomentum Station? And are there any amendments being drafted against the bill to make it more worthy of possible acceptance by CCTA?
Excuse me. We have, through our lobbyist, reached out to both of those offices, and I believe this week has been fairly busy, so I don't know that we have heard a response from either one of them regarding their reasoning behind being co-sponsors of this bill. And to my knowledge, there are not any amendments being proposed at this point in time because the bill has started to move so quickly. I do know that there is there's large coalitions on either side of this issue, and I do think that there will probably be some jockeying and amendments as the bill progresses.
Thank you. I just happened to be on a legislative meeting today with the League of Cities who've announced they're strongly opposed to this. And I don't know if we got any information which would give us any, excuse me, I'm out of breath from coming up over the hill here through Tilden.
Take your time.
My shortcut lost a road, so we were backed up there. I was wondering if there any other information that would support the position requested of us today. And we didn't get any other information on the other side in support of the bill from the authors. Aren't there fact sheets already available to support this bill?
We have requested the fact sheets from the author's office. We have not received them yet at this point in time. I do know that the Teamsters are in strong support of this bill. They had a very strong showing at the original hearing of this bill, so labor is very much in favor of these regulations. And, you know, some of the folks that we know who are also strongly opposed to this bill are listed in the letter that was also included in the packet.
Thank you, and I don't know if comments are appropriate now, but
Yes.
they are appropriate now. I'm just concerned that this is premature for us to take a position at this time. You know, our job is to deal with transportation issues and to move people, and safety is one of our most important issues, and I want to be sure that I have the information from both sides before I make a position. And with the league today saying we're strongly opposed, I'm concerned and probably will abstain from this. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners' comments? Well, now, I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair Glover. You know, as this opposition letter notes, we do have a driver shortage for trucks. We have a driver shortage for bus drivers, and that's one of the main factors contributing to this. You know, the use of autonomous vehicles for long-haul, hub-to-hub driver goods movement. And I believe that this is kind of being experimented with in some other states. So we're not talking about long-haul trucks going through the streets of San Francisco or Oakland. We're talking about hub-to-hub, which seems to me quite reasonable. And I cannot be, you know, in support of this bill. I would be opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, we'll go out for public comments. Use the hand raise feature if there's anyone in the public.
I've got one written public comment for Bruce Olson.
We'll take that. Welcome, Mr. Olson.
Yeah, good evening. I am Bruce Olson, citizen of Pittsburgh, Mr. Bicycle for East County. I am speaking without the official recognition of Bike East Bay, but I think they would not disagree with me when the Board of Directors meets, and that is we do not oppose or support this bill. We just want to be assured that pedestrians and bicyclists don't get run over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. There are no other public comments?
One additional public comment by Nate Hatterly, I'm not sure. Hold on one second, let me get this set up.
I think I'm unmuted. I'm not sure if I can be heard.
We can.
Thank you. My name is Nate Hatterly. I'm representing actually the coalition that submitted the opposition letter, which is about 30 to 40 business organizations and small businesses across the nation, across the state of California. We wanted to come and urge your opposition in joining us in this effort. There is definitely as you mentioned, a driver shortage of about 70,000 drivers. And one of the biggest concerns that the business community has in opposing this is that this will halt the DMV regulation process from moving forward. And in California, it is very, for us close to the business community, it's very seldom that you hear an organization or an industry ask to be regulated by the state of California. And the autonomous trucking industry has been asking for these regulations to move forward so that they can begin the testing process, and forefront of that testing process and even post testing, safety is the number one priority, especially bicyclists and pedestrians walking. Safety is number one. And so that with technology as advancing as it is in California, is wanting to be at the forefront of technology and innovation, this is a missed opportunity to be falling behind with the rest of the nation. There are currently about 6 other states that are already in the testing phase of autonomous trucks. We want California to be able to catch up and actually supersede those other states and be the driver of this technology. Secondly, because of the driver shortage, really the business community is concerned about one thing, and that's speed to market and making sure that consumers can get products on the shelves as fast as possible so that there aren't any hiccups in that supply chain. And currently with that driver shortage, we are seeing that the pandemic definitely made a lot of those shortcomings and those holes in the supply chain more self-evident with toilet paper shortages and baby formula shortages and things like that. So that's why our organizations that have joined on, that are on that letter of opposition, are all in opposition of this bill. Is we want to make sure that the DMV regulation process is allowed to move forward, and that there is an opportunity for the DMV to add something like this bill of requiring a driver for whatever certain amount of time that they deem necessary. So thank you for the time, and really appreciate you looking at this and considering opposing with us.
Okay, thank you. Is that all our speakers?
No,
Oh, sorry.
no, you're right.
Well, public
She's
speakers.
public.
Okay, Commissioner Stepper.
Okay, thank you. I think that in the early testing stages, and you're doing hub to hub, that you're trying to make a process that is more efficient. And I go back 60 years to BART. I mean, my husband rode the first BART train to work, and how much more expensive it became when we had to have a person in each car. So I think the first thing is, can it be done safely the way it's being tested? And I therefore would oppose this bill.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, I'll bring it to,
I'll just make a quick comment.
Commissioner Noack.
Thanks. I'm assuming that there is quite a bit of regulation and policy driven around the safetiness of this happening prior to any vehicle being on the road without a driver. And so I'm assuming there's specific wording, either by, I don't know what body it is at this point, that would do that. And so I'm relying on that to say, yeah, it is safe. It will be safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, other cars even, before this happens. And in that case, then I would oppose it, because I don't want a driver. I remember the days of the railroads when they had to have a cabooseman in the train when there was no cabooses anymore. And so, I just go back to those days of the rail industry on my comments. So I'm assuming the safetiness will have been proven and well regulated before anything like that can happen. So I would agree. I would oppose the bill as well.
Okay, Commissioner Stepper, are you? Okay, thank you. So we've heard the comments from the public and our commissioners. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. Oh, go ahead. Well,
No, you go.
I'll move the item.
And I'll second it.
And that item is opposed position.
Sorry. Yes.
As recommended by staff. Okay, Lindsay, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Abstain?
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes?
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Noack?
Yes?
Commissioner Stepper?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe? Vice Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Chair Glover?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent and Commissioner Fideli abstaining.
A no vote. Thorpe.
It was? Oh, my apologies. No vote for Thorpe. Okay. Changing that right now.
Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda. This agenda action will be presented by Brian on the fiscal year 2022-23 mid-year budget and the authorities and congestion management agencies. And this is going to be Brian.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Brian Kelleher. I'm the CFO for CCTA. And tonight I'm going to be presenting the proposed mid-year budget, excuse me, adjustments for fiscal year 22-23. There we go. Hold on. There we go. A little delay, I apologize. So the typical budget process, our fiscal year starts July 1st, runs through June 30th. The middle of the year, we take a look at all our projects and programs. The reason our authority does a mid-year budget review and we bring it to the board in March is due to the additional CIP projects that CCTA has. There's a lot of outside work that we do with all of your agencies. We work with your agencies to pay for a lot of ped bike and TLC programs. We work with BART on some projects, and we have a lot of capital projects as well that that may have delays due to environmental clearance, trying to get the construction bids together and wait for our E76. So there's some fluctuation in timing of our expenditures, and so what we try and do is bring together a budget that shows what we truly believe is going to be our projection through the end of the fiscal year. And so right here is the proposed summary of changes. In our change from the APC to the board tonight, I reduced some local revenues due to Measure X. I reduced some revenues, $840,000, due to timing of some deliverables that we have. And so there was a decrease in our local revenues, and that's what represents the red colors there. And so the other sources are the programmed reserves that are inside all of our projects and programs that have been money set aside from prior years to help deliver the projects and programs that we have scheduled for this fiscal year. So that's what that $9 million there is. Sales tax revenue is going to stay the same, but our changes in federal, state, and local revenues, it's never a loss of revenue sources. It's a timing of all our projects when we seek reimbursement. The project section had a small decrease of $6.5 million. The program section had a decrease of $11 million. I'll get into that as well, but just the simple is ped bike and TLC programs have been delayed till next fiscal year to seek reimbursement. The cities send invoices to CCTA, and we pay for those projects and programs that your individual agencies are delivering. In administrative section, we had a small change. Debt service remains the same. We have level debt service through 2034. Sales tax revenues, as many of your agencies saw, we had a large increase in 2022. Our budget is going to stay the same at $110 million. Year to date, we received about $62 million. And then our capital projects, we have our funding sources. As we all know, that RM3 is now legalized to pay to all the agencies in the Bay Area, so we've removed some ECRFA funding, and now it's going to be filled by RM3. We had an $11 million deposit from ECRFA for the McCollum project, and now we will return those sources to the ECRFA. Planning, CMA, we also have some federal, state, and local funding that comes through. That's $1.3 million in the federal surface transportation funding that pays for staff and some of our consultant projects that we have working. State planning and programming, that specifically pays for authority staff. That's an external funding source that helps pay for all of these things. And the CMA local agency. So when there's projects done by the planning department and we work on things that are county-wide, we bill to that category, and then we have external funding sources that come in, and then the net difference is shared among population throughout all of the districts, and that's what $275,000 is there. We have TFCA money that we get is $1.6 million. That's pretty much typical every single year. That's about what we get. City of San Ramon, as we all know, we're working on the Iron Horse Trail. They submitted $1.1 million. They had some general fund monies set aside for this project that we collected on. Here we have all our capital projects. Our capital projects is $35.1 million, and historically, it's, one thing I like to do and accounting people do is you go back and look, and these numbers change every single year. You could probably remember years where it was over $250 million when we were doing the Caldecott Tunnel, but now we have SR4, that's wrapping up the cost there. We also have some 680 projects, Innovate 680. And so you have about $35 million there. And then the columns that go left to right are the different funding sources. So RM3, you're going to get about $8.9 million. So you can see how those fundings are allocated to the individual project categories. So at the end of the day, that's about $6 million that's going to come from MSJ funded projects or MSJ funds that have been set aside in prior years. Again, the Caldecott Tunnel here, you can see that there's $335,000. As part of all of these groups, there's delivery of all of the projects and programs, and so a lot of expenses are allocated as a percentage through 2034 to all of these individual categories. As these projects are wrapped up, they'll still have charges year to year for consultants to oversee the project and delivery for CCTA, and some of those costs are reflected in there. The largest project in there is the I-680 corridor at $12.9 million. You can see that that's a decrease of $4.8 million. It's a timing of projects and when we're delivering and projecting to do some project deliverables. Administration is the overhead. So we have administration staff that's allocated to work on things that are directly related to the administration of the department. And when we passed Measure J, there's a 1% limitation on that. And so salaries and benefits for the staff that are allocated for the administration is about $650,000 for the year, and that represents 0.72 of the 1% limitation. And so over the years since we've started Measure J, we've accumulated about $1.1 million. And so when 2034 comes and we go past 2034, still trying to deliver like we did on Measure C, there needs to be funds set aside to continue the delivery as we continue to look on outside grants. Some increases that we had in administration, it netted out to about $51,000. You know, as COVID has kind of changed things and now we're starting to travel more, we're going out to look at different events, and engineers are going to different projects and programs that they're traveling. We had to increase our projects or our travel budget by about $30,000. And as we're doing the Zoom meeting, we're doing remote, and we're also doing these hybrid approaches. We had to buy some computer equipment, and part of it was in last year's budget, but we did some final upgrades this year, and that was about $25,000. So authority-wide, all of the staff there's an increase of about $273,000, and a lot of that has to do with salary increases and then the new staff that we have that we've added, and so there will be fluctuations from year to year on our overall salaries as we hire new individuals. Programs is pretty much related to all of the sales tax money that we get that goes out to the bus agencies and the return to source. So those monies are going to remain pretty much tied to sales tax. But they're in the programs, we have the TLC and the Ped Bike. And so when we looked at the budgets that we had allocated when we came to the board in June of last year, we looked at some of the TLC projects and the Ped Bike, and we realized we weren't going to be receiving invoices from the cities and the counties and other agencies based on these allocations we had estimated. We reduced them about $11 million. The other programs, as I mentioned, that are part of the programs, the ferry service, the bus services, TLC, Ped Bike, communal alternatives, and paratransit, which is something new that we're working a lot more on. There's some expenditures in there in our budget for that as well this year. Return to source, local and sub-regional is about $22.1 million, and if you add the two together, that's about 20% of our sales tax revenue that goes back to all of the cities. And several other projects and program budgets were increased and decreased to meet our current commitments. Planning Department has brought to you in the last year several contracts, and we have an on-call section now, and so we've increased our budget $1.2 million to account for a number of those programs that they're working on. Salary and benefits increased $263,000 in there in the congestion management. And so, as I mentioned early on, there's some federal money that comes in that pays for congestion management and oversight. And so what we do is we use those funds to pay the consultants that work on those, and then we also use it to pay for staff. And so there was a lot of staff work that was done, and so what we did is I was working with Yuli, our new finance manager today, is we kind of move the allocations around for individuals based on the projects and programs that we're working on, so there was a fluctuation there. And there's about $1 million in task orders assigned for the on-calls. Debt service, as I mentioned, is $45 million. This is the highest year that we have, and they call that MADS for the maximum annual debt service as you have your bonds. And so we're right at the peak, and so next year it should come down a little bit, and it'll continue to stay right around the $43 to $44 million as we move through 2034. So at this point, staff seeks approval of Resolution 2208A, which is Revision 1, which would adjust the changes from $178.4 million of the original adopted budget to $162.1 million. The decrease is $16.3 million.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Do we have any commissioners' comments?
I was just going to
yeah.
say, we've done it, at APC, we did a deep dive. And I have to tell you, every time Brian comes before us, he does a really good job, he does an even better job. And, our finances for running the agency are pretty simple. It's our projects and all of this, they're incredibly complicated. And we don't own anything we invest in. So we put out, by the time we're done, several $1 billion, and we'll have no assets. But that's our job. I just think you've done a really outstanding job. Glad you got some support now, Brian. And more than glad when it gets around to make a motion to approve this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, Brian, just one question. Back in December, we talked about a Measure J reserve policy, and this is a mid-year budget review. Do you anticipate at this time being able to put any money into reserves at year end?
Yes. Currently, we're working with HDL, our sales tax analysis team, and so there's a commitment of $110 million to all of the cities and the agencies based on that, and I'm pretty sure we're going to meet that, if not exceed it by quite a bit. When I say quite a bit, it should be around $117, $118 million. There is a chance if people are continuing to the consumer confidence continues through June. When we wrap up the fiscal year in August, we'll get the sales tax numbers. It could be closer to $120 million like we had last year.
Okay, thank you.
And the difference there would be added to our reserve policy, and I think we're looking to save near $40 million as part of that reserve policy. And that'll be built into all future budgets, and we'll report back as we finish the fiscal year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Do we have any speakers? Virtual speakers?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Okay, and no one in the board. Okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I will move this item as presented. Thank you, Brian.
I'll second it.
So moved by Arnerich, second by Kelly. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fedeli?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnerich?
Aye.
Chair Glover?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item on our agenda. This agenda item will be presented by Terry Ann, and this is on the revisions for publicly available pay schedule for fiscal year 2022-23.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and Representatives. In June 2021, the Authority Board approved Resolution 2135A, adopting the Authority's Salaries, Benefits, and Compensation Plan for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. In April 2022, the Authority Board approved Revision 1 to this resolution. It approved a CPI increase effective July 1st, 2022. It established a new Director of Mobility Programs classification, approved the associated salary range and classification specification, added one full-time equivalent position, reclassified 2 FTE senior engineer positions to an engineering manager and finance manager, and this resulted in an increase of 1 FTE, taking it from 20 to 21 in fiscal year 2022-23. This item is being brought forth today to consider a further revision to add a projects manager classification, add a contracts manager classification, approve the associated salary ranges and classification specifications, remove the Director of Programs classification due to retirement in December, reclassify 1 FTE from the Director of Programs classification to the Programs Manager classification, add 1 FTE for the contracts manager classification, and add 1 FTE for an admin assistant classification. This would result in an increase of FTE positions from 21 to 23. In December 2022, the authority approved a framework to establish an Office of Accessibility and Equity, an advisory committee, and a coordinated entity. A key step in establishing this office is the hiring of a program manager. These actions were taken in accordance with the countywide accessible transportation strategic plan. The programs manager would develop, coordinate, manage, and administer the activities related to the development, implementation, tracking, and monitoring of the authority's OAE, Office of Accessibility and Equity again, at managing these programs, including the annual work plan. The programs manager position will be funded from multiple funding sources. A contracts manager is needed to support the coordinating entity with the management of grants, funding, insurance, and risk management, procurements and contract administration, and management, including support for authority-led projects. The authority continues to be successful to secure grant funding and proceed with innovative projects that require complex agreements and a need for this position. With all of this comes a need for an administrative assistant to help support the OAE, coordinating entity, advisory committee, and staff in the programs department with the administration of these programs and effort. In October 2022, we hired Coffin Associates to conduct a classification and compensation study for the 2 new proposed classifications. They created a job description, and based on the recommendations from the prior total compensation study, we determined the salary range for the programs manager classification and the contracts manager classification, which took into consideration internal alignment and parity, and were compared to the established 9 comparator agencies used in the total compensation study. The proposed changes to salaries and benefits will be included in the fiscal year budget, and it will account for 23 positions at a total cost of $5.9 million. Adding these positions will allow the authority to advance our goals and objectives related to accessibility and equity in our programs, manage grants, contracts, and risk, ensure we have the proper support for the OAE and CE, and allow for succession planning goals. If approved, recruitments will be initiated with Baker Tilly with the intent to fill the positions by July. Staff seeks approval of Resolution 2135A Revision 2, which will amend the authority's salaries, benefits, and compensation plan for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, to add a programs manager classification at a salary range of $10,881 to $14,689 per month, add a contracts manager classification at a salary range of $9,619 to $12,986 per month, approve the associated salary range and classification specifications, remove the Director of Programs classification, reclassify 1 FTE from the Director of Programs classification to the Programs Manager classification, add 1 FTE for the Contracts Manager classification and 1 FTE for the Administrative Assistant classification, and will result in an increase of FTE positions from 21 to 23. That concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any commissioners' comments or questions?
Very thorough.
Seeing none?
I'm on the Accessible Transportation Task Force and Committee, and I am really pleased that we're getting this moving on. So I'm wholeheartedly asking the commissioners to support this.
Okay, we're going to go out for public comments at this time.
No public comment, written or verbal.
Okay. So, first off, before the motion, I want to say thank you for bringing this before us. Long overdue, but much necessary. So, do we have a motion?
I move the item.
Second.
So, a motion by Haskins, second by Carlson. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Chair Glover?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda today is a presentation by Terry Ann on a Senate Bill 2449.
Good evening again. This item is related to Assembly Bill 2449, which went into effect on January 1st, 2023, and has 2 components. adopt a reasonable accommodations policy for all legislative body meetings of the authority, and then it provides a new and third option for legislative body members to participate via teleconference at legislative body meetings under very limited circumstances. One is just cause, which specifically defined as caregiver needs, a contagious illness, physical or mental disability that cannot be accommodated, or travel while on vacation. I'm sorry, on business, not vacation. Emergencies, I just want to see if you're listening. Emergency circumstances, which is defined as a physical or family emergency that prevents the member from attending in person. Both have narrow criteria and significant restrictions that require staff and the members to be trained, and they have a sunset date of January 1st, 2026. Just cause does not require formal action by the body, however, emergency circumstances does, and it is not guaranteed to a member. The member is required to state which method they are using, provide a brief description of why they are requesting it, which must be verified. If the request doesn't meet the requirements, the member would be notified publicly and would need to attend as a member of the public. The member must state if there is anyone at the remote location over the age of 18, and if so, what the relationship is to them. The member must have both audio and visual. Members would not be allowed to attend without their camera on, and it would be required to be on the entire meeting, and this would be hard to ensure compliance. It has strict tracking requirements and only allows for a member to attend 20% of the regular meetings within the calendar year via teleconference. This means only twice per year for monthly meetings and once per year for bi-monthly or quarterly. Proper tracking would need to be readily available to ensure validity and that the member's vote would count. The action could be revoked if the vote was needed to pass it. Currently, we have 10 committees with 158 primary and alternate members that we would need to track, not including vacancies. If a single member is participating via teleconference, we would need to conduct roll call votes and roll calls, which would no longer be required when all members are back in person. With last-minute teleconferencing requests allowed to be made at the meeting, this can affect the conduct of the meeting, and if the clerk is not notified in advance, the member would not receive a unique link to access the meeting as a panelist. There must also be a quorum of members present from a singular location for a member to invoke AB 2449. So you cannot use the member attending via teleconference to make a quorum. We barely make quorum on some of our advisory committees, and this would make it more difficult, especially with several of them having 20-plus members. So adding more technicalities adds to the complexity of running these meetings. Additionally, if a member is attending remotely and there is any technological disruption for the public attending remotely, then the meeting cannot continue until it is fully resolved. If a member invokes AB 2449, it requires the clerk to monitor incoming written public comments via email during the meeting, in addition to public speaker cards and virtual comments up until the public comment period closes for each item. With AB 2449, there are now 3 different types of Brown Act provisions to monitor. We are continuing to utilize AB 361, which is separate, so long as the Contra Costa Health Services continues to recommend social distancing. When we can no longer utilize AB 361, we would return to traditional Brown Act requirements. We are encouraging all members to attend the meetings in person, and if not available to attend, to send their alternate if they have one assigned. This action will not affect the public being able to participate in a hybrid meeting. The other part of AB 2449 is the adoption of a reasonable accommodations policy, which requires that legislative bodies implement a procedure for receiving and swiftly resolving requests for reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities. The policy lists the accommodations that the authority has in place that are readily available upon request, a process to request additional accommodations, and guidance for staff and members who receive such a request. We have already reviewed the language on the agenda and found it to be compliant. Due to the narrow criteria, significant restrictions, and complexity of Assembly Bill 2449, staff seeks approval of Resolution 2306A, which will adopt a reasonable accommodations policy for all legislative body meetings of the authority, reject the teleconferencing procedures provided for by AB 2449, which would allow members of the authority's legislative bodies to participate remotely via teleconference under just cause or emergency circumstances, and provide approval for the executive director or designee to make changes to the reasonable accommodations policy. That concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions you may have.
Okay, any commissioner questions, comments, or maybe clarifying questions? Okay, seeing none, do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Okay, and no one in the boardroom. Okay, what is the actions of the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of Resolution 23-06-A.
Second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kelly, second by Stepper. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes?
Commissioner Stepper?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnovich?
Aye.
Chair Glover?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent.
Okay, moving on to our next item on the agenda. This agenda item is an informational item that will be presented by Tim Hill, our Executive Director, on the work plan to advance the authority. And Tim disappeared. Oh, there he is.
Shrunk.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tim Hill, the Executive Director of Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and here to kind of pick up where we left off in fall of last year, where we had our Authority Board workshop in terms of, come on, advance, there we go. In terms of following up where we left off with our Authority Board workshop that we had in September of last year. And so in that workshop, some of you were able to participate, and I know that we have a few new board members since we've had the workshop. So a lot of this presentation, some of you have already seen, but this is really just to get us all at the same playing field to really start this discussion throughout the year. But we talked about a number of topics. We talked about, you know, how the board really sees, and also including stakeholders. We had we had many of the cities attended, our transit operators attended, as well as some members of the public, and got a lot of good positive comments from the workshop, and we covered a number of issues, as well as talked about what we thought the future of transportation would be. And that was pretty much the first day. And the second day, we talked about how we're actually going to advance CCTA as an organization. And really where we left off is CCTA should really kind of take a bigger role in how we manage the transportation system here in Contra Costa County, as well as planning, coordinating, and operating. So as you all know, we've done a really good job of really planning and funding and designing large capital projects, but this is now more focused on how do we make the system operate more efficiently. And we kind of coined the term as like CCTA 4.0. And so the history behind that is CCTA 1.0 was really the establishment of CCTA back in 1988, and really kind of focused on, you know, how we're going to implement and establish CCTA as an organization. Some of the things that we kind of addressed during that time. So we were established in 1988. Our first countywide transportation plan wasn't established until 1997. And the reason why that was is because that was an era where we as an organization were trying to understand what our role is in the county back when we were first established. And in some ways we've kind of progressed and established and built upon that foundation over the last 35 years. And then came along Measure J in 2004, which provided us more funding for bigger projects and for local roads, more support for local jurisdictions. And then the 2010, I call it the Randy Iwasaki era. You know, our former executive director was very innovative and really kind of laid down the innovative framework that in some of the culture of this organization as you see it today. And since then, we now are ready to kind of build upon that culture that we've done, and I kind of look at it in terms of applied innovation. And now we're at a point today where we were back in 1988 to 1997, where look at how transportation is changing. And so in 1.0 and 2.0, you know, the projects were very focused on highways, very focused on capacity enhancing projects, you know, also really focused on really traditional delivery methods, not a whole lot of technology, not a lot of whole things about really about the status quo. And so in 3.0, we started seeing more innovative project delivery frameworks, such as we delivered projects using construction manager, general contractor. We also started seeing more multimodal projects, more projects that are relative to demand management, such as, shifting into other modes of transportation, transit, as well as new programs such as transportation demand management, Contra Costa 511. And now with 4.0, now we're looking at how we can better diversify our revenue, look at more innovative financing type of methods, such as public-private partnerships, look at opportunities to diversify our revenue portfolios so we're not 100% dependent upon Measure J. And so as we look to the future, these are some of the operational strategies that we'll be looking at in terms of really optimizing the existing network, looking at how we can better leverage data, also look at building a centralized management system, so like a centralized decision support system that will help give us more performance data so we can manage the system relative to like KPIs or key performance indicators, and more shift towards a performance-based system. The other thing in terms of some of the other strategies is what can we do to help our local jurisdictions facilitate better operations. And we're already kind of doing that, or starting to do that, through this countywide connected signal system project. We programmed about $30 million through OBAG 3 funding, and that is CCTA kind of taking a bigger role in terms of how we can support our local jurisdictions with very old traffic controllers, very old operational systems, and how we can bring these systems to higher standards to be able to coordinate them in the future. The other one is highways. Our highway system is different. As you all know, with the Innovate 680 program, we're using a lot of different strategies, and those strategies may require CCTA to step into the role of operations. One that's really we're focused on right now is the Cooperative Adaptive Ramp Metering Project. We have been talking with Caltrans about operating a brand new ramp metering system, and through this pilot, Caltrans is interested in CCTA taking a bigger role in those operations of those ramp meters during the pilot phase. And this is also starting on a project down in Riverside County where they're also stepping into the operational role on the state highway system. Transit, taking a much bigger role in terms of implementing the strategies through our integrated transit plan. How can we facilitate transit priority systems? Like, for example, we're taking a big role in implementing a cloud-based transit signal priority system. And then how do we integrate all of these things to where we have a seamless experience with a customer focus? So how does this impact our authority? So right now, CCTA is established under Public Utility Code, and that is really to administer high-priority local projects, transportation improvements. We'll also have the authority of being the state designated congestion management agency, which gives us a lot of broad authority. And so part of the effort that we want to take on is working with our legal counsel and our consultants is really make sure that we have the legal authority to do what we're going to set out to do relative to CCTA 4.0. Based on the broad authority, we do feel like we do have a lot of this authority already, but it's good to confirm and make sure that we're kind of checking that box. And you've seen this before, but this is more of the three-pronged approach. So pillar one is CCTA as it is today, and continuing to support and focus on that core and building on the past successes. Pillar two is really thinking about how we modify or change the organization, or do we need to change the organization to really pursue these operational efficiencies and multimodal strategies. And then the last pillar, pillar three, is really looking at do we need to create new entities to really support this vision. And we're already seeing that through the implementation of the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, where CCTA is taking a big role in establishing a brand new nonprofit to coordinate those accessible transportation services, and that is an example of CCTA 4.0. So what we want to do is really leverage a lot of the existing programs that we already have underway. We're not trying to create create a new wheel. We're not trying to really create new entities if we don't have to. We really want to build upon a lot of the existing programs, such as like Innovate 680. And so some of you have seen this, but Innovate 680 has really pushed us in this direction. And so I think I've said this to multiple times at the board meetings that if we don't want to go in this direction, then we should stop doing Innovate 680. And so if we want to move in this direction, then this is, and so continue to support Innovate 680, we're going to have to really look at how we're going to advance the organization. And so things like decision support systems, as well as the countywide connected data center. We've talked a lot about shared mobility hubs, our mobility as a service platform. The shared autonomous vehicles are going to be delivered at Bishop Ranch this week to start commissioning of the route. And so that is operations. I mean, CCTA is operating those shuttles, not Bishop Ranch, not BEEP. It's CCTA that's operating those shuttles. We're already stepping into this role. And I already mentioned the managed motorways and the rate metering. But a big portion of this, and the biggest question that we'll have to find out as we kind of move forward, is how do we diversify our revenue and identify additional funding for operations and maintenance, which is probably the single biggest challenge in front of us in terms of moving in this direction. Some additional operational things that we do, Gomentum Station. I mean, I know it's a program, but we do operate a program out there. Contra Costa 5001, we interact with the customers. This is an operational program that we're providing TDM and commuter benefits. I already mentioned our countywide connected signal system project, the dynamic personal micro project that we're doing a P3 on, that will involve operations. And then we just recently completed a feasibility study to develop a vehicle miles traveled mitigation program, and based on that, those recommendations, which we'll be coming to the board to brief you on this, but the recommendations are basically pointing to CCTA to implement this new program, which again may involve us advancing an organization to be able to support these programs. So a couple operational scenarios, and I'm going to run these real quickly, but when you see these letters, I know everyone hates new acronyms, but you have OPS operations, CTAs, the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, MP nonprofit, P3 public-private partnership, and the current model that we're almost familiar with is Gomentum Station. This is a P3 where we are the managing entity, but we've entered into an agreement with a nonprofit to help us implement the program. The next one is Accessible Transportation, where again we're establishing a new nonprofit, and that also a public-private partnership. The other one is the shared autonomous vehicles. So this is a direct relationship to operations, and again, this is forming a P3 through a contract with BEEP as well as other partners to operate the shared autonomous vehicle. Shared mobility hubs. This is going to involve multiple private partners, and again, we'll have a direct relationship to operations. The countywide connected signal system is really going to be supported between CCTA and our local partners. And how we kind of move this forward. And this is going to be important in terms of establishing our roles between us and the local agencies as we continue to implement the countywide connected signal system. And then these are some of the operational milestones. So this is why we're having this conversation. It's here and now, where staff is beginning to look at particular agreements this year to really, in order for us to start working and negotiating those types of agreements, we want to make sure that we have the support of the authority board to move these types of things forward. And so the work plan that this year is, one, continue to advance the priorities that I just listed, but also start refining the operational use cases, which I showed previously, but also evaluate CCTA's organizational structure and governance framework, making sure, again, we have the legal authority. Also, really key here is engaging with our partners and stakeholders. What's really important about CCTA 4.0 is making sure we're bringing our stakeholders with us relative to our local partners, the 19 cities, the county, our transit operators, as well as the public. So making sure we've got really good stakeholder engagement and public engagement. And our goal is to provide you quarterly updates as we kind of move through this work plan. And then hopefully at the end of the year, maybe trickle into the beginning of next year, similar to what we did with the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. Last December, the board adopted like a framework in terms of what we should do in terms of creating that advisory committee. So the idea is to do something similar with the authority board to say, you know, this is the framework that we need to, how we need to advance as an organization, and we'll have an implementation plan. This is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to happen this year. This is a 2 to 3 year initiative relative to CCTA 4.0. And I think getting your support on the framework will help staff have the ability to continue to move this forward, like things on Innovate 680. Like, for example, I mentioned the Cooperative Adaptive Ramp Metering Project. Later this year, we're going to have to start negotiating an operations and maintenance agreement with Caltrans on that project. And so making sure we have the support of the authority board is important for our staff to be able to start those negotiations. This is the overall governance structure. It's in your staff report. But the key thing here is making sure that we have a strong support of our stakeholders. So the Technical Advisory Committee would have a representation of our 19 cities and counties. The steering committee will probably be a smaller group of the cities to make sure we're on the right path relative to a lot of the policies and discussions. And then we'll leverage the existing committee framework within the authority, such as APC, BTCC, TCC. Depending on the topic and the policy, we'll bring specific topics through these committees respectively, or bring things directly to the authority board. And so what's going to happen now until probably the next quarterly update is we're going to establish that technical advisory committee, start engaging with our stakeholders, particularly the local jurisdictions, continue to refine those operational use cases. We're going to start looking at potential government framework. AMRA's actually already under contract to do the legal authority, Fenimore Wendell, and then we'll plan to bring an update to the authority board in summer of this year in terms of all of those items that I just listed. And that concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. I want to thank you for this presentation. You know, we come a long way since 1988, and certainly that's because of visionaries such as yourself that have put so much in place. And you know, one thing you talked about was public-private partnerships, which are going to be very important in order to achieve the goals necessary to be a successful transit agency. So I certainly accept this concept, and I will take comments from commissioners. Commissioner Unrich.
Well, I echo everything Federal said. I think he served at least as long, or probably longer. We're both on Measure C. I went away and came back under Measure J. But the history of the 1.0 to the 4.0 is really important to understand who we were and where we are. And, you know, we are, as we travel around to go to various conferences, you see that the agency that everybody looks towards is us. Statewide, we are the agency of choice to look for innovation, to look for solutions. And the big pivot, as Federal just mentioned at the end there, was our public-private partnerships. And one of those is working with each of us. I represent all 19 cities. That's appointed by Mayor's Conference. And, you know, starting in the downturn of the economy, Randy Iwasaki started this, and then Tim really picked it up, where the agency went to the city, says, look, a lot of you, I come from Danville, a small town, Moraga, Orinda, all of those, don't have the staff or the bandwidth to do major projects. And so our agency started reaching out and found a methodology to make that work. In fact, one of our, I still call it the old style, design build project, but we, the agency, are building a Iron Horse trail crossing over 8 lanes of traffic in the city of San Ramon. They're paying all of our staff time, they're paying everything, but they don't have the capacity, and we got a contract with a guaranteed maximum, and it really is that classic kind of design build with some other nuances of it. That really represents the future, I think, of what this agency can do. And the idea of operations and maintenance, it's about looking at using technology to improve safety first, flow, and it seems to be safety. If we can solve that, flow increases, right? On the 680 corridor or the 80 corridor, when you have an accident, it takes 4 to 6 hours to clear that. What I mean, that ripple effect that it creates. And so trying to use the technology and things, and Tim, you know, you and the staff and everybody have been so focused on this, and finally convincing Caltrans to be a partner and let us be that partner to help demonstrate how this is going to work using the Innovate 680. And the reason we're using that corridor, it's probably the best scaled to actually develop all that technology. If you try to do it on 80, in West County, it's so dense and there's so many other problems there. We need to get the technology solved. We're the first in the nation to do this. And this structure, and having sat there for 2 days with a lot of fellow commissioners when we were in Lafayette Library to talk about this, we never really done that before. So I'm completely behind this, and I think this is, for our newer commissioners and anybody that's going to be part of this is a pretty exciting time. And we're the smallest agency around. We do more work, we get more grants than anybody, and we accomplish more. Yahoo!
Commissioner Fedeli.
Thank you. I just want to agree that this is pretty big and exciting and transformational. and agreeing with the chair about how important P3s will be in moving forward on this. And I think in the post-COVID world, we need additional entities to help us with operations. And I just wanted to ask a couple questions. When you talk about legal research, you're really talking about the authority of us to do operations, correct? And because there will be lawsuits moving forward, probably, right? Testing us, and we have to be ready for that. So that may mean an increase in our budgetary needs in that direction.
Yeah, that's actually correct, Commissioner Fideli, is we're checking those boxes as we're, looking to operations. Operations is dirty business, right? So someone can get hit, there could be a fatality, and so it does open up the authority to potential lawsuits. And so we want to make sure that we're managing those risks, we're identifying those risks. We're also identifying our legal authority, making sure we have the legal authority to defend ourselves and making sure we have a defensible position. But the other big thing is insurance, and making sure we've got the proper insurance to support this. And so, like, for example, on the shared autonomous vehicles that we're doing down in Bishop Branch, Brian, our chief financial officer, did a real hard look at our insurance and worked with our insurance provider to make sure we've got the proper insurance to be able to prepare for that if that does to happen. And so, so this is really looking at what can we do in the Public Utility Code, and if we can't do the things, maybe this is maybe a follow-up to your question, is if the Public Utility Code is limiting us to do these things, then it may require legislation. It may require some sort of legislative change in our authority to be able to do those types of things in the future. And so that's why it's important to start working on this now and identify, because as you all know, legislation for something like this will probably take 2 years if you can get it supported. So, and making sure you find the right authors and so forth. So that's why the time is now, and making sure again that we have the authority. And if we don't, we'll be looking to the authority board to get direction in terms of how we get that authority.
And I was saying, when you talk about outreach, legislators are one of those stakeholders, because we may need to change some definitions in the code. Going forward. And last question is just if you can maybe estimate, can you, over the next 5 years, you say 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, how big an increase in personnel do you think this might mean for CCTA?
So in the spirit of, we contract out 95% of our work, our contracts, and so that's what we would do as part of this operation. So I would just, and don't quote me on this, but I would anticipate, increase of staff of maybe 2, potentially 3 people. And then there are contractors out there that specialize in operations and maintenance. Companies like Capch, companies like Kofi Root. There are entities out there that operate, like, for example, express lanes. There's a, try and remember the one the MTC uses. It starts with a T, and I can't remember the TransCore, thank you. So TransCore, MTC contracts with TransCore to operate their express lanes. And so there's multiple entities that we can do that with. And so that's what we would do, is we would contract this work out, make sure, again, we continue to be flexible and nimble as we kind of move through these different phases.
Thank you. It's not as many as I thought you might be saying. Yeah, thank you.
Any other commissioners? Okay, we'll go to public comment if we have any.
We have Representative Peoples.
Okay, Representative Peoples.
Thank you very much. Very ambitious program. I've got 3 different comments. First of all, you talked about the TAC having representatives from all the cities. I hope you're going to include representatives from the bus agencies and from BART, because they're doing sort of different stuff. You talked about coordinating all the transit and Contra Costa, which is a great idea, but there's a big movement all going on with the Seamless folks, and they've passed a couple of pieces of legislation, they've had them vetoed, but that's moving very actively. How would you see the Contra Costa coordination going on with the region-wide coordination that's being pushed by Seamless?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Representative Peoples. So to answer your first question, yes, there will be transit operators as part of this technical advisory committee, as well as folks from the cities and BART. It'll actually really mimic a lot of the technical advisory committee that we formed as per Innovate 680, where we've got Caltrans, MTC, CHP, cities, trans operators, a lot of the stakeholders we've already been involving on the Innovate 680. Technical advisory committee would be represented as well, but more on a county-wide level. And then in terms of there's two things there. One is we're going to do an integrated transit plan if you actually approve the next item on your agenda. And so we're looking to do an integrated transit plan, and that integrated transit plan is really looking exactly what you're talking about, Representative Peoples, in terms of coordinating the work that's being done by MTC on the regional network management, and then making sure that stays coordinated with a lot of the local work that we're doing here. So it's really important that we stay coordinated on both fronts to address a lot of the things in terms of like fare integration, and coordination of schedules. And so all of those things will be coordinated through this integrated transit plan. Hopefully that addresses your question.
Yeah, I've got two other items. One is signal coordination, and we've been doing a lot of that, dealing with Caltrans and 13 different cities. And I hope you talk to Will Bueller, who's our traffic engineer, who's been leading that effort. And I'm sure you have, or your folks have talked to him, because there's a lot of work that's already been done in that. The other thing where I'd offer some help, we have a very strong risk management and insurance department. As you can imagine, having 624,000-pound vehicles running around, we have to deal with that a lot. And they are available to consult with you on anything you want. Joe Sprague, who's our general counsel, is in charge of that, but JP Popoff is the risk manager, and he's very, very good at that stuff. Different risks than you're dealing with, because you've got a lot more high-tech stuff. But big vehicles running around, we know about.
Thank you for your questions and comments, Representative Peoples. Any other speakers?
No other public comment, written or verbal.
Okay, this is a informational item, so it requires no motion, or we'll just accept the report.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Item E, and I think this is going to be Ying Smith.
Still Tim.
Hold on. No, it's Ying. If I could find my page here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So next item is presented by Ying Smith, and this is an agreement for the countywide integrated transit plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. Ying Smith, Director of Mobility Programs. Yeah, I apologize. Technology failure. This item is the integrated transit plan. We're asking you to consider and approve the contract agreement. Your staff report has a lot of details. I just want to highlight a few. First, a little bit of background. Back in the 2020 Transportation Expenditure Plan, it developed a transit first policy and the direction to prepare an integrated transit plan. The concept is also response to several regional efforts, including MTC's Blue Ribbon Task Force, Fare Integration Study, and the Regional Network Management. CCTA staff began conversations with the bus operators as early as 2021, and it was agreed that taking a proactive approach to the regional efforts would be to prepare this integrated transit plan. The ITP will serve as a blueprint for a customer-centered approach to transit delivery in Contra Costa County in this post-pandemic environment. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the budget. Currently, the total project budget is $2.7 million. This is an update from the budget you saw back in March 2022. The first group of funding you approved was $1 million from Measure J in programs 14 and 16. And since that, we received a grant from MTC in the OBAC 2 program for $500,000. Since we also received a Caltrans grant in the TIRSA program, and out of that, $1 million would go into the integrated transit plan. We also supplemented with federal funds in the CMA budget for $200,000. The contract agreement amount is part of this $2.7 million budget. The remaining budget will be spent on a separate travel market analysis as well as project oversight, plus contingency budget. In the consultant selection, in March 2022, you approved a request for proposal as well as the draft scope of work. The RFP itself was released starting in November last year for 1 month. We received 3 proposals from vendors. We formed an evaluation panel made up of staff from the partner agencies, including MTC, Tri-Delta Transit, County Connection, WestCat, and AC Transit. We evaluated the proposals and conducted interviews. The proposal from Sam Schwartz Engineering was ranked as number 1. With working with the consulting team, we developed this scope of work that's included in your packet. It will take about 18 months to complete, and it will include 5 major tasks. First is existing service assessment and market analysis. And the second one is the action plans to improve the existing transit services and expand new travel choices. We also like the team to prepare a white paper on institutional and policy changes. The study will also include a capital improvement program. Of course, will include a very robust public and stakeholder engagement. We have called some special attention to an equity analysis, the evaluation of impact from the COVID, how it affects the travel patterns, as well as the capital program that will support a higher level of transit service and better integration. The staff recommendation is for you to authorize contract agreement number 630 with Sam Schwartz Engineering to prepare this county-wide integrated transit plan. That concludes my presentation, and would like to happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ying, for that presentation. Do we have any commissioners' comments, questions?
I just make a quick comment. This was a really great process. It's taken a long time to get to this, something we've been waiting for. And I really admire staff in selecting the partners who sat on there, from AC Transit to everybody, to help make this recommendation. I don't personally know them, but you guys came back with a very strong recommendation and think this is a great choice, so thank you.
Okay. No other commissioners' comments? We'll go to public comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I just do a follow-up on that? Something that we talk about internally with staff right now is the projects are getting more complicated because they're involving so many stakeholders, right? So like when you look at the Innovate 680 program, you're dealing with, 3 transit operators, you're dealing with Caltrans, MTC, CHP, 6 cities, and those are the nature of the projects that we're starting to do now. And so we're having to manage a lot of different voices, a lot of different stakeholders to bring all this stuff together. And like the integrated transit plan, we're trying to coordinate, almost 12 different transit operators. And so the projects, it used to be we would be kind of relative to 4.0, but we would just focus, we were head down, nose on the ground in terms of delivering highway projects. Highway projects were, they had their challenges, but they were easy to deliver. Yeah. We had to go and buy a Concocha permit. You got one person to get approval from, which is Caltrans. And maybe a few cities if you had some local road work, but now we're doing these large countywide type of projects and initiatives, like the countywide connected signal system. 19 cities we're trying to get consensus with, and so it requires more time on us as staff to try to do our due diligence to like push these things along and get all the support and do all the stakeholder engagement, you know, on these projects. And so, yeah, I think it's important to note that because that's exactly where we're becoming like bread breakers in a way. You know, we're trying to bring everyone together and to move these initiatives forward.
Yeah, and really, I thank you for those comments because I think it's important, and I think it's some of the things that we've been thinking about as a commission is how do we get more involved with community, being very transparent and bringing people along so that they value the work that's been done within the agency here. So, yes, it's a lot more work, but I think it brings a greater degree of value. So, any public comments?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
So moved as presented.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion by Honorich and a second by Noet. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Chair Glover?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sauce absent.
Okay. Thank you all again. Next before us is correspondence and communication. We have no correspondence letters in our packet. Next is Associated Members Report. We have a report from Transpac, which is provided in your packet. And there's a meeting report from WITAC. And so that is a reporting that's in your package. Next is, are there any board members or staff that have any? I have no report, but we do have Commissioner Askew.
Thank you. It was my honor to be the representative of Contra Costa Transportation Authority at the CalCog conference that was held, was it last weekend? Okay, this has been a just whiz-bang week. It was almost like you sent a boy on a man's errand or a girl on a woman's errand, however you want to be, because a lot of it was just a little bit over my head, but I did learn a huge amount, and we talked about such things as the importance of regions and how we used to be able to get along as little teeny cities and towns, and now our borders are neck and neck, and it just is a whole different way of approaching things. The one I wished a professional was down there to hear was how to get the best funding from the federal government and the state and that sort of thing. That wasn't something I was very familiar with. There were some fascinating demonstrations on how they think cities should be more like esplanades instead of main streets, and we learned about resisting change and how to fix that. We learned a little bit about California politics and how it fits in the world. And the one that took the most energy from me was the breakout session on planning on gas tax replacement. It was all very interesting, and everybody had like basic ideas. And then when you throw on the equity initiative that we all intend to meet, it was not a solvable problem by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that maybe is something that we need to look at as we go forward. I didn't get to go to the second day, but I'm sure it was equally as interesting, and if we can afford it, I recommend that we send at least 2 commissioners next time.
Hey, thank you. Is there any other commissioners? Okay, so not any representatives? Oh, no.
Well, I guess I'm representative and a commissioner, I guess now. I am drinking out of the fire hose right now, being on MTC along with Federal. And it's great to have two of us on MTC and also on CCTA. So I'm excited about that because it's good information to go back and forth between the two. And Federal and I both on Monday, Spencer and Chris, went to 4 of the northern waterfront sites looking at potential ferry service for Contra Costa County. So that was a fascinating day. And so hopefully with us representing MTC and doing some of this other work, we'll really be able to add to all the stuff that's going on here at CCTA and better coordinate. So just wanted to make a comment about that.
And I want to thank Ying for being a part of that tour that we did of the cities. And we also were able to have our partners with WETA present at that particular tour. And I think we're gaining the traction that I know that the waterfront cities are looking for. Right. Okay, there are no other comments. I'm going to ask our executive director for a report.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce a new employee. So if she can come up to the podium. So Kat has joined us as an accounting specialist. And so she actually replaced Irene Ortega, and so she's been handling probably one of the most important things is payroll and paying all of us. And also handling a lot of other duties as well. And so she's got over 8 years of experience. And so before joining us, she was a finance technician at the city of Dublin. And she also went to Cal State East Bay and majored in business administration and public administration. And she lives in Livermore, has 2 kids. And she likes to cook and read and go to parks and look at different libraries and playgrounds. So we just wanted to welcome Kat, and maybe if you want to say a few words.
Sure. Thanks, Tim, for introducing me. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm excited to join CCTA, not only because it's a new job for me, but also I'm impressed by the innovative mission of this agency. So I look forward to learning more about the agency and bringing positive impact to the agency as well as the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Welcome to the team. And the next thing is...
on behalf of the CCTA family, we welcome you. And we know you have some major responsibilities when it comes to writing those checks and making sure that people pay. I'm sorry, Chip, go ahead.
No, that's great. Then a quick update. So our next board meeting is on April 19th. So between now and April 19th, we will be hosting our Redefining Mobility Summit at Bishop Ranch on April 18th. And Lindsay and I are fast and furious on that right now. But maybe just to give you a little preview of kind of what's going on. We have 4 panels that we've formed. One is an international panel where we're going to have multiple people coming from other countries to participate and talk about what's happening in technology across the world. We're also going to have a panel on about the business cases of autonomous vehicle and kind of really focused on how we can operationalize and move to the next generation of autonomy. The next panel is on digital infrastructure, so really focused on cybersecurity and technology and smart signals. And then the last panel is actually on emerging fuels. So we're going to have hydrogen fueling, electrification, and then obviously we're going to be re-inviting our 50 STEM students to the program, as well as our continued demonstration zone put on by AAA. So yeah, it'll be another exciting program, and so look forward to hopefully seeing you all there on April 18th. And then the other thing kind of going hand in hand with that right now is I mentioned in my other report that the shared autonomous vehicle is being delivered down the Bishop Ranch this week, and we're going to be starting commissioning of that route. We are right on the heels of our 30-day limit, and so if everything goes perfectly, which it never does, but if everything goes perfectly, we're hoping that the shuttle will be available for public service at the Redefine Mobility Summit. But we're praying that it all goes perfectly. So no guarantees. It's been quite the challenge. We actually got our NHTSA permit and our DMV permit faster than the agreement with Bishop Ranch. And so it's been really interesting. And the main hang-up on that agreement has been insurance. So when you're operating people, putting people in autonomous vehicles and moving them around, the insurance company is having a hard time really evaluating that risk. And so so that's been really the big issue. The other thing is, last night, I don't have a report on this yet, but last night the City of Concord met to determine the next steps of the Naval Weapons Station development, so we'll be following up on that with the city. But the reason why I bring that up is that there's a lot going on at the Naval Weapons Station, and also staff has been working along with the Gomentum Station Ad Hoc Committee on kind of how we can prepare Gomentum Station for success in that future development. And so we've been developing some site plans as well as some business models to be able to present to the city, but also that goes hand in hand. There's also a lot happening at the national level right now in the AV space, where me and staff have been kind of spending a lot of time recently. And so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is going to be releasing a notice of proposed rulemaking to be requesting entities like Gomentum Station to submit to be part of and developing an autonomous vehicle national framework. And so CCTA and Gomentum Station, we're preparing that and developing our team and partners around that. And so that's really important in terms of hopefully what we can do, position Gomentum Station to be essentially a national certified test bed for autonomous vehicles across the entire nation. The other thing that happened since the last board meeting is I recorded another podcast. It was called On the Patio, and this one focused on street smarts. So if you're not familiar with our Street Smarts program, it's actually a school assembly function that we do under Contra Costa 511, and we teach students on how to walk and bike safely, make sure they identify, look left, look right, but it has multiple levels in terms of elementary to middle school to high school, and so we talked a lot about that program. Almost spent like 30 minutes talking about that program, so I think it might be split up into 2 episodes actually. And then lastly, Stephanie and I went to this public-private partnership conference, and it was in Dallas, and what we've been told it was the P3 conference to be at, and I've never been to this conference, but it was interesting. They actually had a public sector track where we actually were trained in O&M, risk evaluation, relative to public-private partnerships, and also gave us a lot of confidence in terms of what we have been doing, and then also in terms of what we're going to be doing in the future relative to the dynamic personal microtransit and the P3 project. So it was really, really good. And I guess the really cool thing about this project is that, Stephanie and I never been there before. Everyone knew who we were at CCTA, and they all knew our DPMT project. Soon as we talked about, we're from CCTA, oh, you've got that DPMT project. So these P3 projects are far and few between, but this is a very unique project because it's doing P3, because a lot of P3 happens on the vertical side, not on the horizontal. And so this is a horizontal project in transportation with autonomous vehicles, and it's a very unique project. So the industry is watching it very closely. So it was actually really, really cool to be a part of that and be able to talk to people and learn from people about that. So, and that concludes, I was going to talk about ferry service, but you already brought that up. I thought that was really good that WIDA was interested in our programs, and looking forward to what's going to come of that. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So you have the calendars provided in your packet. This meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be on April 19th here at 6 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Nicely done.
Yeah.